Welcome to the inaugural, the very first HetNet Expo. You might be thinking, well, I've been to these before, but they used to be called, of course, DAS in Action. We've been doing this since 2006, and this builds on what we've been doing since 2006. And as you can see this morning, it's bigger and better than ever. We've got the most sponsors. We thank all of you. We've got the most exhibitors, and we got the most participants. That would be the most connections, pun intended there. Thank you all for contributing to that. It's great to be in the city of blues, but we don't have the blues. Life is good in this business. We are more like rock and rolling, but blues, of course, is the basis of all that. So we are, something of a cyclical industry, but this is an industry that is right now on the rise, doing well, and going to do even better. So we have come a long way, if you think about it, since the founding of the DAS Forum back in 2006, when nobody was even sure if distributed antenna systems were going to be really taken off. Small cell wasn't even a phrase that was used much by the wireless industry. Well, take off they have. We renamed the show, I think, just in time. This is a wonderful event. We've got a great exhibit hall. At 11 o'clock, the exhibit hall is opening right next door. And we, I think, have a special mission. And those of you who are the founders here, those of you who are members of the HetNet Forum, I think understand that unlike some of the other events on this topic, and everybody sees this buzz and the for-profit companies come in and they want to do an event here and there, but this is different. PCIA, the HetNet Expo, is really an organization that's here as a nonprofit trade association representing you. We don't do this show and then move on. Everything that we earn here is plowed back into helping build up this industry. Everything we do is about building the industry. All the content here is about what you need to know. That means we do have better content. That means we have better participation, and we have better outcomes for your bottom line. Just look at what we're doing with it this week alone. As soon as this event ends tomorrow, I've got to hop back on a plane to DC. I wish I could stay. They gave me a nice room upstairs. But I got to get back because on Friday, the FCC is going to adopt an order that, among other things, takes PCIA's proposal on small cells and DAS. That will exempt many of them from historic preservation review and from environmental review on the poles that you put them on. So you don't have to do that review for each pole. That means, as I said, more for your bottom line, lower cost, quicker sales, and a better business model for our whole industry by speeding deployment and lowering those regulatory barriers. The business model is tough enough to make it work with small cells. Last thing we need is to have to go through a long, drawn-out process for each node that we're putting out, each small cell. Well, that's going to change as a result of what we're doing. We have more work to do, but it's a great start. So that's why I think you've come to the right place. And all this energy, all this enthusiasm, we can certainly thank our director of the HetNet Forum, Tracy Ford, you heard from for a lot of what has been built up over the years with this. Let's give her and the whole PCIA staff a round of applause for all the great work they did putting this together. And of course, a lot of the credit goes to all of you. Business is booming because you've made small cells and DAS a big part of the solution to the wireless data crunch. Their role is now indispensable as the carriers are trying to meet these booming demands for wireless data from their customers. So we're here in Chicago to gather this industry together, to put our heads together and figure out how we're going to deliver, how we're going to get customers the bandwidth that they need, where they need it. And we're here really to help make the business model gel. I think we have to admit it's still coming together. We're still trying to figure it out. And what a great place to do it, where the best minds of the industry are together, not only here in the sessions, but in rooms, meeting rooms, and discussions in the hallways. Well, we're gonna figure this thing out. We're gonna do it together. We have all the right people gathered here to move our industry forward. The carriers, the vendors, the systems integrators, the service companies, the verticals, the whole ecosystem is under one roof in this beautiful hotel here in downtown Chicago. So we've got a couple exciting days ahead of us. There's plenty to learn, to see. The exhibit hall is going to be amazing to network with your customers, future customers hopefully, and of course your peers and colleagues. Tonight, I think we're in for a real treat when we take a DAS tour and a networking reception at the Museum of Science and Industry right down the street, sponsored by our good friends and leaders in the industry, HetNet Systems and Corning. And there's a good wireless exhibit in there too, if you get a chance to take a peek at it. I guess we're part of history now. Speaking of history, look how far we've come since the DAS Forum began just a few short years ago. You fast forward to today and you see that DAS and small cells are getting unprecedented attention. Carriers are talking about huge numbers and have already begun to deploy in a scale that we have not seen before, and I think it's just getting started. As they densify the networks, this is a key part of the solution that really supplements what's going on with the macro network. Bringing the network closer to the end user is really key to help people get the bandwidth they need where they need it, anytime, any place. And the numbers are staggering when you look at the increase in demand for wireless data, and they're not going to slow down anytime soon. Goldman Sachs at its recent conference said they didn't see any slowdown for this sector of the industry. Our particular sector was the only one that Goldman said it thought was the hottest in the entire industry, and they don't see that slowing down for 10 years given the need of data demands. And that makes sense. Just about a year ago, PCIA released a study that showed the private investment, the huge capex that the carriers are making in wireless infrastructure through 2017 will generate as much as 1.2 trillion, that's trillion with a T, in economic growth and create 1.2 million jobs. And that's what we need to talk about when we're out there putting these systems out. This is having a huge impact, not just on our industry and its growth, but the entire economy. And that's what we explain to policymakers. And that's why we're getting traction in Washington, getting traction in the states, getting traction in localities. HetNet Forum member AT&T had a statistic. We saw that wireless data has increased by 50,000% over the last 7 years. Of course, you think back 7 years ago, there was virtually none. So but it's a good number to think about how much this data has increased. And keynote speaker Paul Dublin will explain how AT&T is planning to respond to that tomorrow. We have a lot of carrier participation here. We thank everybody from the carriers who are coming. We hope we can help our carrier members to figure this thing out together. A Cisco survey I saw recently found that 1 in 3 college-age and young people think the internet is as important to them as food and shelter. Oh my God, any of you who are parents probably understand and would be surprised by that their priorities might be a little misplaced, but you know, hey, it's good for business, so it's okay. In our case, what the heck. So people are increasingly expecting it, not just young people, but everybody, that they're going to get the same experience over these wireless networks as they do at home when they're away, when they're on the road, when they're in a building like this, and they get really frustrated when they don't have that. That's not only changing the devices that we use to connect and the applications that we use daily, it really changes how we build the network, both indoors and outdoors. All this excitement in the HetNet space is getting a lot of attention at the very highest levels of government. PCIA and the HetNet Forum are working closely with government leaders at all different levels. We're certainly making progress, as I mentioned, to help streamline wireless deployments to help the U.S. compete on a global scale. But when we chose a date for this event, little did we know that all these pieces of the puzzle were coming together just this week. Yesterday, I was up on a dais like this with the chairman of the Federal Communications Commission and the Secretary of Labor. Just yesterday, we did a signing ceremony for an apprenticeship program that we've created for our industry. And it symbolized the Department of Labor's support and the FCC support for the public-private partnership we've created to do training programs to give skills to wireless infrastructure workers so that they can build out these networks. We're starting with tower technicians, and that's what some of the discussion was yesterday, but guess what? We're planning to develop training programs for small cell and DAS installers, and even further for RF engineering. Our aim is to make sure that we create a wireless workforce that can meet your needs in the future going forward, because as I said, without this slowing down, there's virtually no training programs outside of the companies themselves in the United States. The educational system has not caught up with our industry. So we're trying to drag it along, and we're having some success, and we're having success with getting support from the federal government on that as well. And of course, you know, we get back from Washington, and here we are in Chicago. In terms of advocacy, PCIA, the HetNet Forum, are getting policymakers and leaders from across the wireless industry together right here in Chicago. And we're going to be meeting in a collaborative environment to talk about federal lands and federal buildings, how we're going to get this equipment sited and clearing the way for getting those communications facilities on all this federal property. You're looking at 30% of the United States land, including thousands of buildings in urban and rural settings alike, are federal property. And they're key to connecting people wherever they are. People get frustrated. They don't know if it's public or private land. They're driving through an area where they can't get service, and it's because either side of them might be federal lands. We've got to change that. There's no reason we can't make that happen. And we have all the right minds here tomorrow at a special event to get that done. But perhaps the biggest news of all that I mentioned will happen on Friday. When I fly back, the FCC is going to issue this far-ranging infrastructure order aimed at streamlining regulations across the board, not just for small cells, but for the entire wireless network. As I mentioned, we're going to streamline the environmental and historic preservation review process for DAS and small cells, basically exempting a number of them if they're on poles. But we're also doing some other great things. The FCC is expected to clarify the rules for upgrading technology on existing infrastructure through co-location. They're going to tighten the FCC shot clock that sets the time period for the state and government siting process. They're going to infuse greater certainty into the FCC's overall process for broadband investments, and they're going to remove barriers to putting up temporary towers to boost coverage for special events. Basically, all of the issues that PCI has been working on for years with the HetNet Forum are culminating in this fantastic order that the FCC is going to adopt on Friday, largely along the lines of what PCI and the HetNet Forum members have proposed. So we're hoping for a really historic day in moving this process forward. All these actions make it easier to build out mobile broadband infrastructure in this country. We're making it easier for you to do your jobs, so you don't have to hassle with the regulatory aspects of it. You can get to the work of building the networks that your customers expect. The HetNet Forum has been working really closely with the FCC, with all the different agencies of government to get these guidelines done. And we have provided a lot of examples, and thank you all for giving us good examples of how those roadblocks have slowed down deployments. And we've relayed that, and they have heard your message. You know, they heard that it doesn't make any sense to treat DAS and small cells as if it was a giant macro tower. But sometimes they are treated that way. They have to go through the entire process that a large tower would. Well, that's going to change after this order comes into effect. So PCI offered that roadmap to the FCC. They took it up. I mean, take the small cell example. We convened members from across the industry. We came up with a definition of what types of systems should be exempt from the Commission's historic and environmental review processes. And we laid that out. The FCC actually put that up for comment, and we are hearing it looks like something very close, if not right along that line, will be adopted on Friday. So this is the kind of work that we do for you. This is why we're so proud to represent you, and we're getting such traction in Washington. And of course, we're far from done. I was talking about our educational initiatives. Just earlier this month, the PCI was awarded part of a $3.25 million grant by the Department of Labor. It was awarded to Virginia State University to create some of these training programs I was talking about, to develop this wireless workforce. We're focused especially on educating veterans. We have a partner called Warriors for Wireless that we've worked with, and we really believe if we can get more veterans into our industry, they're just the kind of people that we need. Not only is it a tragedy that people come back from serving our country overseas and they can't find a job here, but we have jobs that we can't fill with qualified personnel. What a perfect marriage. Nobody better than them to bring in to our industry. They deserve a job, of course, but they also happen to be the best qualified. They're team players, they're safety conscious, they are leaders, and we are fortunate that we are already making progress in getting them trained. Aiken Technical College with Warriors for Wireless has developed a program that over 500 graduates have been trained. And small cells and DAS are next. So I want to talk to a lot of you while we're here, and we're going to try to get a committee together. We're just getting started. We're on the ground floor of this, and I'll be talking to a lot of you about this to get your input on what that curriculum should look like. What would you like to see in a workforce? What are the holes that you sense that you're going to be needing this year, next year, 5 years down the line? And then we're going to work with all of you to develop a curriculum. Some of you already have training programs and have offered to help us to give those to us. We could give them to the universities to teach it and to others. And we'll spread this around the country, so when it comes to finding qualified personnel, you'll find they're available, there's more of them, and that's going to be good for the entire industry. That means we'll get the job done right the first time, we'll get it done safely, and it'll be meeting the customer's needs that aren't slowing down anytime soon. That's why the HetNet Forum and PCIA exist, to help our members navigate through this, to help you think into the future. What is it we can do to help you? What are your workforce needs going to be? What are your regulatory hurdles? How can we help you go through the maze of all the different levels of government? And better yet, can we build a bridge right over those mazes so you can find a well thought out path to get where you need to go without having to go through that maze? So with that, I want to thank our sponsors and our members for all their support. Thanks for making the show the biggest and best ever. And thank you all for joining us here today. Let's start the show.